Shalom Bracha, and welcome once again to Mitzvah of the Week, a division of Parasha Study Plus, part of Tanakh study. This week's Parashat Devarim, starting the new book of 5 books of Moshe, and we will be discussing the mitzvah of Kiryat Shema. We're actually taking mitzvot from later on in Devarim, again, as we're trying to cover those that are most relatable. And again, so much to talk about regarding Shema, but we'll try to really scratch the surface and try to give as much information as we can about this most important mitzvah. So let's get started with our first slide. We see in Devarim Perek Vav, which is in next week's parasha, Pesukim Daled through Zayin, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, right? The Lord Hashem is our God, and Hashem, right? Yod Ke Vav Ke is unique, right? Is Echad, stands alone with nothing else. And then we see Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavecha bechol nafshecha bechol meodecha, that a person needs to love Hashem with all their heart, soul, and with all of their resources. Me'odecha. Ve'hayu adavrim ha'ele asher anochi misavecha hayom ad babecha. And you have to take to heart all of these issues or instructions that I am giving you over this day. So this is really the standard text, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, uttered by Moshe Rabbeinu. And if you look at the Mefarshim, as to where Moshe Rabbeinu got this syntax, this was based on a famous conversation with the brothers, the Achim, and Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu, according to the Midrash, was Hoshesh. He had a doubt of whether or not the brothers at this point, once he leaves this world, would actually, continue in his ways. And the brothers told him, right, it's the different quote in Bereshit, but it's where the rabbis get it from. Shema Yisrael, again, listen, O Israel, Yisrael, the person, Yaakov, that Hashem is our God and Hashem is one. And Yaakov became appeased, and he retorted, Baruch Shem Kevod Machoto Le'olam Va'ed, and he was appeased. So again, this has become the standard tagline of faith and emunah in our religion, because that's where the foundation of Torah is, that we have to love Hashem with all of our heart and soul and with all of our resources. And now this concept, these words, which is a mahloket, which would be beyond the scope of today, as to which words. Is it just the first line of Shema? Is it the first paragraph, Ve'ahavta Enochem Ameh? We see that these words, we'll just call it Shema Yisrael, must be the words Asher Anochim Savecha Hayom Al Levavecha. Put it on your heart. Now here's the commandment. Here's the directive. Teach them constantly. The shanen means to teach in a way where it's going to be sharp in your mouth. Levanecha, to your children. V'dibarta bam, and constantly talk about them. V'shivtecha bebetecha, when you're sitting in your house. U'lechtecha b'derech, when you're going on your way. U'bshoch becha u'kumecha, when you lie down and you get up. So we're going to talk about that first. B'shoch becha u'kumecha, as the mitzvah is going to be that we're talking about the mitzvah to recite Kiryat Shema morning and night, and the ramifications that has for us, and how important of the mitzvah it is. So here we just, as a summary of this slide, you see the Shema, you see that's part of the paragraph of Ahavta, it's the key part of the cornerstone of the Torah, and we must recite these words and tell them always in our house, on the derech, and each and every single day when you lie down and when you get up. Let's go to the next slide with Sefer HaChinuch mitzvah Taf Kaf 420. The mitzvah of Kiryat Shema Shacharit ve'Arbit. There's a mitzvah to say Kiryat Shema both in the day and at the nighttime of Arbit. Mitzvah Kiryat Shema Shacharit ve'Arbit. שנצטווינו לקרות בכל יום ערבית ושחרית פסוק אחד מן התורה. ספר החינוך says it's just that first pasuk in the Torah שבסדר זה, וזהו שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ועל פסוק זה נאמר ודיברת בם. That's what it says. When it says ודיברת בם, constantly speak about it. ושתך בביתך ושוך בך וקומך. It's talking about that pasuk. So we see that בספר החינוך categorizes it as this is the mitzvah, to both say Kiryat Shema morning and night. Now, this is in the Gemara Masechet Berachot Daf Yod Amud Bet, and Sefer HaChinuch quotes it here. What does that mean in the V'shoch Becha U'kumecha? So Sefer HaChinuch gives us a nice summary of the explanation, even though this is in the Gemara. V'sha'ah shebnei Adam shochvim, at the time when people go to sleep. adam kamim, and the time when people wake up and arise from the day. To start the day. V'kamashma lehu lerabanan sheb'sha'a shebnei adam shuchvim yikareh kol halayla ad she'aleh amud hashachar. Now, when did people go to sleep? So night is a little bit different than day. Ushoch becha has a longer time than ukumecha. Shoch becha bnei adam, they go to sleep in all parts of the night. Some men don't go to sleep, people don't go to sleep till midnight, in the middle of the night. Some people don't sleep till the end of the night. Some people go to sleep as soon as it gets dark. So at which point in the night? Therefore, this answers the age-old question, and we'll see the Gemara, the first sugya in Shas, which is about Kiryat Shema. That's why the Chachmei Talmud, right, in the rabbis of the Mishnah, the Tanaim, ascribed it to, they don't just say, oh, it's a famous question in the Gemara, why don't you just tell me the time of when I can say the nighttime Shema? Just say, Seta Kohavim. Why are you giving it in a riddle where it says from the time when the Kohanim come in to eat their terumah? Dehainu Seta Kohavim. It is Seta Kohavim, but the rabbis wanted to teach us that that's the time at night when it starts. But really, you have the entire night as what is brought down by Sefer HaChinuch, and we will revisit that in a moment when we talk about how long in the night does a person have. Let's look at the sugya in Masechet Berachot. Here it's broken down into snippets. This is the first Mishnah, first words of Shas. When does a person recite Shema at night? The time when the Kohanim come in and they are able to eat their terumah. Until the end of the first rotation, where they used to have shifts of the night, and there was a transition as to the status of the night, and again with the temperaments quote unquote of Hakadosh Baruch Hu, when there's din, when there's chesed, and the Gemara talks about certain sounds that would be demarcations as to when this part of the night was over and the next part of the night would start. That's Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. What does Chachamim say? Chachamim omrim ad hatzot. Chachamim say, no, you have until Shema to be able to recite. You have until Hatzot to be able to recite Shema. It's until midnight. What does Rabban Gamliel say? Rabban Gamliel omer ad she'aleh amud hashachar. He says, no, even more time that you have to say the nighttime Shema until amud hashachar, until the dawn, the crack of dawn. That's where Rabban Gamliel comes from. Famous question that's still in that Mishnah. Ma'aseh uba'u banav mibet mishteh. Now, Rabban Gamliel said that you have the whole night. So the sons came back from a wedding. That's the translation of bet mishteh. And Amru lo, so they told him, Lo karino et Shema. They told their father, Rabban Gamliel, we didn't read Shema yet. Amar lahem, he told them, Im lo ala amud hashachar chayavin atin likrot. If it's still enough time where the dawn did not break, you still have to recite Kiryat Shema. V'lo zo bilvad amru. Not only this, ela kol ma she'amru hachamim ad hatzot. Anytime the rabbi said until any mitzvah where they said until you have until hatzot, mitzvatan ad shi'aleh amud hashachar. The mitzvah really goes, even though we said until midnight, really the mitzvah goes all the way till amud hashachar. Next slide has the continuation. Hekter halavim ve'evarim mitzvatan ad shi'aleh amud hashachar. Even though the rabbi said hatzot for the burning of the fats and the extra limbs that were on the mizbeach, they have the mitzvah up until the break of dawn. Anything that hits the mizbeach that's edible for only one day, the mitzvah until what ends the day, amud hashachar. It's a famous question. Im ken lama amru chachamim ad hatzot. If that's the case, why did the rabbis tell you until midnight? Very famous words. Kedei laharchik adam mina avera, to distance a person from sinning. because we're natural human creatures. You tell us that the deadline is Monday, we naturally say, "Oh, if I could only wish." We dilly dally till Sunday, and then we hand it in Monday night late. I wish I could get an extra day. I wish I had a little bit more time. So it distances us from the avera of missing out on Kiryat Shema and anything for that matter of that is goes until Chatzot. That's why the rabbis say we try to get it done before Chatzot. So that's an extensive. That we just went a little bit longer because I felt it my obligation to show that it was the first sugya in Shas. And now it's going back to Sefer HaChinuch, which is now going to explain. That was explaining the time frame of B'shoch Becha. We said it's from the time of the Kohanim Nichnasim Le'echol B'Trumatan. It's from Seta Kochavim. You have all night. Well, really, the Gemara said ad Hatzot. Why? Kedei l'archik et adam min ha'avera. But anything that's ad Hatzot, you have until dawn, which is the halacha l'maaseh. What about the daytime Shema? V'sha'ah shebnei adam kamim mashma lehu tahilat hayom. So he says, and the time when Bnei Yisrael when people, Bnei Adam, wake up, what time is that? From the start of the day. Kilomar, what is the start of the day? Kishaboker or, Kishadam makir et havero b'rihuk arba amot. He says, when the light starts to creep into the atmosphere, so much so that the person is able to recognize his friend from a distance of 4 amot, from 6 feet. Ad shalosh sha'ot shelemot, until 3 full hours from the sunrise. So this not time that's known as Mishi Yakir. It's the quote from the Rambam, Perek Aleph, in Laws of Shema, Yod Aleph. So we're not going to bring it again, but we're going to talk about it here. This is the famous, when we talk about Netz HaHama, Rambam says that Shema should be said a few moments before Netz, so that the Amidah is said with the rising of the sun. So Shema is happening right at a few moments right before Netz, and you're timing it so that the Amidah is going to be right at the time of the sunrise. The difference between sunrise and dawn, sunrise is Netz, is that the ball of the sun is now cracked above the horizon, and Alot HaShahar, like we said, is going to be when this little bit of light starts to seep into the atmosphere, and now you can recognize recognize your friend. The Sefer HaChinuch continues, don't think there's a contrast between this, the time of waking up and the time of going to sleep. Don't say that the time of waking up is all day, just like the time of going to sleep is all night, as we said before. A healthy person doesn't wake up in the middle of the day, and he doesn't wake up towards the end of the day. So a message to all of our teenagers that, again, you got to get up, and before the 3rd hour of the day, make sure that you are saying Shema. Tefillah is for the 4th hour of the day, by the end of the 4th hour. And again, we see that the reasoning is that because that's it, people should be up already. And no, as the Gemara says, when it comes to Amidah, no king gets up past the 3rd hour. So you got to make sure that you, for the 4th hour, and you got to make sure you're up to pray before the 4th hour, the Zman of Tefillah. Just threw that in there as a nugget. And now that we're talking about it in regards to Shema. What is the shoresh? What is the root of this mitzvah that we have a mitzvah to read Kiryat Shema, Shacharit, and Arbit? משורשי המצווה שרצה השם לזכות עמו שיקבלו עליהם מלכותו וייחודו בכל יום ולילה כל הימים שהם חיים. Hashem wanted to give us the zechut, remembering His glory, because again, that's the only reason why we're alive, is to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and our Maker, and embody all of His character traits into this world, that we accepted upon ourselves His kingship and His oneness, uniqueness, every day and every night, all of the days that we are alive. And ki behiyot ha'adam ba'al chomed, since we are, and this theme has been going around a lot in our series, since we are a physical being, right? Nefateh achar hevlei ha'olam, we get seduced by the emptiness of this world. V'nimshach leta'avotav, and we follow our desires. Sarich al kol panim zichron timidi. So therefore, it's necessary for us to have a constant reminder. Rabbi, why do we need a constant reminder? You do, because you are a flesh and blood human, and we can't control our desires. So we need that daily reminder 2 times to be able to have complete kavanah about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let's go to the Rambam in Mishneh Torah, Hilchot Kiryat Shema Aleph, Perek Aleph, Halacha Bet. So what do we read? Umahu kore. So let's see, what does Rambam say to read? Right? Even though we saw, right, Sefer HaChinuch saying that the mitzvah is technically just to say Shema Yisrael, what is considered the Kiryat Shema? And let's go to the Rambam. Umahu kore, what do you read? Shelosha parashiot. You must read all three paragraphs. What are the three paragraphs? Elohen, Shema. That's what we just read with Shema included with Ve'ahavta. Then you have Ve'haya im Shamawa. And then you have Parashat Tzitzit Vayomer. ומקדימים לקרות פרשת שמע מפני שיש בה ייחוד השם ואהבתו ותלמודו, שהוא העיקר הגדול שהכל תלוי בו. First, we start with Shema because it's jam-packed. It has Yichud Hashem, making Hashem one, loving Him, and the fact that you have to read and learn Torah all the time, which everything is centered around learning Torah. If you don't know what's in the Torah, how are you going to worship Hashem? And after that, after that, the next order is Vayayim Shemoah. Sheyesh bat tzivui al zechirat she'ar kol mitzvot. Then, after the essential mitzvot from Ahava, from Ve'avta, now you have the zechira of all the rest of the mitzvot in the second paragraph. Finally, as the Rambam says, Ve'acharkach Parashat Tzitzit. Finally, last one is Tzitzit. Shegam hi yesh ba sivui zechirat kol mitzvot. It has a commandment of how then to remember that zechira. First paragraph was the commandment about the zechira. Tzitzit is how you remember it, and we're going to see later on that also it has such essential paragraphs such as Yetziat Mitzrayim, etc. Let's see the Rambam, Mishneh Torah, Hachok Kriyat Shema, Aleph He. Hakore Kriyat Shema mevarech lefanea ul'achareha. Another thing that we need to know about this mitzvah, okay, brief summary to this point. We see you have to say Shema morning and night. We spoke about the timing in the day and in the night, B'shoch Bechab Kumecha, and what that means. We saw also, we digressed a little bit about tefillah and when we can pray and say Shema exactly. And now we're going to go through just a hit list of other laws that are going on with Kiryat Shema. As Rambam says, is that when it's Kiryat Shema, you must make blessings before and after them that were established by Ezra and Beit Dino. Bayom mevarech shtayim lefaneha, we say two blessings before, ve'achat nachareha, but only one afterwards. That's for the morning Shema. Ubalayla mevarech shtayim lefaneha, ushtayim lachareha, 2 and 2. And that's well known. The Adbit one that we add is Hashkibenu. We have the standard Ga'al Yisrael that we also had in the morning. But there's always 2 before in the night Shema and before the day Shema. Now, I love this paragraph from the Rambam because it encapsulates almost 4 to 5 seifim in Maran Shulchan Aruch, which we'll get to, which the Rambam spent a lot of time talking about. One of the biggest things in Kiryat Shema is how to pronounce the Shema. We have to be very careful with how we pronounce the Shema, and there are a lot of laws as to how to pronounce the Shema. So if this is mitzvah study, if you're going to do the mitzvah, you got to do it right. So we talked about timing, we talked about the paragraphs, we talked about making a blessing. Now we need to talk about how to actually do the pronunciation. So let's see the Rambam. Rambam says, it is in Mishneh Torah Perek Bet, Halachat Tet, Ketzad Yedakdek. How should you be scrupulous with and careful with reading the Shema? Yishmor shelo yarpeh hazak v'lo yahzik harafeh. First of all, you can't just give charity degeshim all over the place and saying, this happens in Selichot. Some people, they say, Anenu, with them giving it a dagesh. It's horrible. That means to torture us. You have to be light. Anenu, right? And not jump in. That's, you made something that was rafeh, hazak. Something that had to be light into being strong. So anytime you have a dagesh, right, the shinnantam, right, which has a dagesh, you can't delete that dagesh either. Good. You can't switch the sheva. You can't say when it's not really and you can't say and not pronounce the when it is really לפיכך צריך ליתן רווח בין הדבקים, בין כל שתי אותיות הדומות, שאחד מהן סוף תיבה והאחרת תחילת התיבה סמוכה לה. In that same way, you need to make sure that you don't, like we said, yaniach hanad. Sorry, really the translation is that you can't swallow up letters or separate letters. So when there are two letters that end with the same, two words that end with that one end, the first one ends with a letter and the next one begins with the same letter, you have to separate them and make a correct space. Let's say al levavecha. You can't just swallow that on and say al levavecha. We only pronounce one lamed in that way. So you have to say al levavecha, even though it has a makaf in many places in the Shema that way. You want to put the concept together, but you can't say al levavecha. You swallowed up a lamed. Al levavecha, as you have to, which is what you have to say. And again, that's the example that Rambam brings. Kigon bechol levavecha, kore bechol, veshohe, vechozer, vekore levavecha, vechol levavecha, ubechol nafshecha. Right, that's the one that he's referencing here. Bechol levavecha. Vechen va'abadetem mehera. Another example, right? You can't say va'abadetem mehera. You just swallowed up a mem. Va'abadetem mehera. Hakanaf and Petil, even though they have the gesh to help you, is another example. Now a new concept. Zayin shel tizkeru. So it doesn't sound like tizkeru. Tizkeru, so that you should remember it. V'sarich leharich bedalet shel ehad kedei sheyamlichehu b'shamayim uba'aretz uba'arba ruchot. So now you have to elongate the dalet. What does elongate the dalet mean? You don't say ehad. You're pronouncing it a long time. What you really need to do is the dalid without a dagesh is like the th sound, ehad, like you're saying the, and then you close with a d, hard sound. So you say v'sarich l'harich bedalid, you stretch out the dalid, you say ehad. So that's how you elongate the dalid. Masechet Berachot says you get a nice reward for doing that and elongating the dalid. And how long should you elongate the dalet for? So that in your head, you can think about that you crown Hashem as the king, look at my head if you're on video, up, down, and then the arba ruchot, start up, down, going to the right, and then coming back up and around. Mishnah Berurah also talks a little bit more about how to rotate your head in that. So sometimes if you see people saying Shema but rotating their head, they're doing a up and down. And you have to we do elongate the height a little bit. We say so וצריך שלא יחטוף בחטא כדי שלא יהיה כמו אחד. We don't go ehad, right? Sorry, we don't go ehad, because then it sounds like which means no. Had, there's no had. No, there is a had. There is a had. It's Hashem. So you can't cut the het short either. So we try to elongate the het and the tet and the dalid a little bit, definitely the dalid, to make sure that we have enough time to crown Hashem in our thoughts. I'm shrinking myself down just to see this is that slide, only in English. You could pause it now to look at it. And now just a couple more laws that we have from Shulchan Aruch on how to recite the Shema and some syntax of Shema. So first, Shulchan Aruch, this is from Or Chaim, Siman Samech Aleph, which is where you look for all of the laws of how to pronounce Kiryat Shema. Asher anochi mesavecha hayom, haynu lomar bechol yom, yiyu be'aynecha kehadashim, v'lo kemi shekvar shama oto harbe pa'amim, she'eno haviv etzlo. One of the key things that when we're saying Asher anochi mesavecha hayom, and then we say al levavecha, not hayom al levavecha, that it's only one day, we make a small pause so that and to know this halacha, that we're saying that it needs to be fresh on you each day as if you received it hayom. That we don't say it's hayom al levavecha, oh, like we got it today, but we know we got it previously. However, each and every day, it has to be as precious as if you got it today, as a gift that's so important. Sometimes we get gifts and then we neglect the gifts and we leave them. So I was like, I got this a long time ago, and it's not so precious. But we can't say, yeah, I heard this already. It has to be important to us as if we heard it today. In Seif Gima, also very important, explains our custom. The Kiryat Shema, yesh resh mem he. That is 245 tevot, words. וכדי להשלים תרש מ"ח, in order to add to 248, כנגד איבריו של אדם, which is כנגד how many bones there are in the human body, which is also what we do to commemorate the mitzvot aseh, the positive commandments, 248. שאדם מסיים שליח ציבור אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. Those three words, וחוזר ואומר בקול רם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת, then we come back and then we say it all together. So again, the reason, a trivia question that you could ask, and from Mitzvah of the week, why do we say Adonai Elohim Emet at the end of Kiryat Shema? In order to go from 245 words to 248. Shulchan Aruch continues in Seifim Daled and Hey. Daled nohagim likrot pasuk rishon bekoram. We have the custom to read the first pasuk of Kiryat Shema loudly. Why? Simple. Kedeh le'orer hakavana. We say it because now we have to wake us up to have the kavanah, as we saw it's mitzvah deoraita, and according to many opinions, on that first pasuk, Shema Yisrael. That's why we say it out loud, deoraita, that first pasuk, for the fulfill the mitzvah, to awaken our kavanah. We also have the custom to put our hands on our face for the first pasuk. Same thing, has everything to do with kavanah, so that we don't look at anything else and we make sure that we enhance and make sure that we have proper kavanah. Continuing in the same siman, Sa'if Zayin, Sarich laha'arich b'chet shel echad, kedei sheyamlich HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'shamayim u'ba'aretz. So I explained this one already. We elongate the height of echad, so that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is king of the shamayim of the aretz. Shel hazeh romez ha'hatotrot shebe'emtza hagag ha'chet. The letter of the chet in the Sefer Torah, you see it's a combination of two letters that have a pinnacle on the top, and it says that's why it says ehad, that you should be ma'arich. It's a siman. V'yarich bedalet shel ehad shiur sheyachshov shekadosh baruch hu yachid be'olamo. How long should you be ma'arich the dalet? As we mentioned, that Hashem is one in His world, u'moshel b'da'arba ruchot, and He also rules in all of the dalet ruchot. Ha'olam v'lo ya'arich yoter mikashiur zeh. Don't go too long. So I basically explained this outside in 2 slides ago. So here it is in Shulchan Aruch, Seif Zayin. I forgot that I put it in as a slide. Finally, Shulchan Aruch in Orach Chaim, Siman Samach Aleph, as we said, Seif Kaf He, when it says tie them onto your hand. Yimashmesh b'tefillin, you should touch your tefillin shel yad. When you say it should be a totafot in between your eyes, yimashmesh b'shel rosh, you should move around and touch the shel rosh. When it says and they shall be visible, yimashmesh b'shnei tzitziyot shel lefanav. So this is just procedure in Kiryat Shema, that we also have to be touching the vehicles, the conduits that we're using, to make sure that we're always remembering the mitzvot. And the tzitzit, to always remember those mitzvot. We're having those mitzvot on us. We make sure that we always say Kiryat Shema with tefillin on, because it's not edut sheker. And we have tzitzit on us also, where we're using the tzitzit to remember all the mitzvot, as the essential third paragraph of Kiryat Shema. That's all for us today. Be'ezat Hashem, we'll make sure that we're fulfilling our mitzvah, the mitzvah of Kiryat Shema, morning and night, and be able to constantly use it to galvanize us in Torah and mitzvot. Tizkeh b'nachamat Zion, and Shabbat Shalom.